welcome to episode number 204 of the ETPHDT podcast with myself and Steph. Hi Steph, how are you?
I'm good. I realise I look like a leprechaun today.
Well, I was just thinking.
Well, it's tomorrow, isn't it? You're perfectly aligned. So, oh my God, the look.
Yeah.
God, I'm so like...
You're just on it, mate.
Life.
Yeah. Well, actually, this podcast is going to go out after St. Patrick's Day, so maybe you're just prolonging the festivities.
There we go. Always thinking of other people, me.
That is you. That is you. And Anna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Oh, good.
Good. And I am also well. I'm good, thank you. I will just say anyway. And we were just talking before the podcast that I was just getting trolled on Instagram. Some trolls never get easier. Some trolls I don't care about, and I just immediately would delete them. And then other times, sometimes it does get under my skin, and the ones that always get under my skin are the comments on my body. Interestingly, it just really frustrate me when people ask me to apologize for showing up in my body, and I think it triggers me because it's something I'm always trying to be mindful of balancing my want to show up in my body with my the right thing of not showing up too much in my body. Because I do think if any of us were always naked on our social medias whilst also talking about body image and relationships with food, I do think that would be problematic and that wouldn't be right. But I also think it'd be problematic to just completely hide away because we're in a body that could potentially trigger someone else. I think there's definitely a fine line, but that means that whenever I do get trolled for it, it's like my thinnest bit of skin, so it always just really jabs me in the heart, and I'm immediately texting people that can calm me down, like, please comfort me. So
it's just exhausting about like having to censor yourself to that degree.
I know, it's truly wild, and I follow some really good accounts on social media that are like kind of anti-cancel culture accounts, and I don't always agree with everything that they say, but sometimes they can be really helpful to look at when they say things like, it's not your job to validate other people, but it's not your job to censor what other people see and how people see you, and like you can't apologize for using your voice, all of these things. And I know all of this to be true, but also
still hurts.
There's just one little bit, there's just that one thing that just gets really under my skin, and it's just because I think it's my own self-doubt. When someone says something where it hits you in a space where you're not 100% confident in that, and that is genuinely me. I'm not 100% confident in how much I should show of myself on social media, and that's always been my thing that I've been trying to navigate. So if someone gets you where you feel a little bit off, that's what it just really knocks you over. Whereas if they were talking about my nutrition advice or something, I'd be like, screw, like 2-2-1 and just block them or fight them, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, what a swell week. Well, it's Monday. This is Monday's podcast, so who knows what will happen at the weekend. Okay, let's just get cracking on the questions. Steph, do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay, how to battle your impulsivity, especially this time of year when the overindulge ram down your face and you see 6-week slim down programs everywhere. Just me.
Oh, this must be a sneaked in from Christmas question.
I think so, yeah.
I was thinking like it's also like Easter, and then people are thinking about summer holidays, so still works at this time of year.
True that. Battling impulsivity when the urge to overindulge is there. I think everyone has the want for instant gratification, but I honestly think that the skill of learning how to practice delayed gratification is so underrated. Sometimes we over pathologize things, and we're like, oh, maybe you want to overindulge because you want to emotionally eat that chocolate bar or that Easter egg or something like that. Realistically, a lot of the time it's also just because it's delicious and we want that instant gratification. I've definitely found myself recently, like, I'm being overeating recently, and it's partly because like I quite like my body when I'm a bit bigger, but I try not to eat to change my body now, but that is in my brain of like, well, I quite like my body a bit bigger, so that's fine. But I've definitely been comfort eating, not overeating, but not emotional eating, just like just having a bit of chocolate. I'm going to go in the fridge. I'm like, I'll just have some chocolate or whatever. So like completely aware. Just, to be honest, I'm just focused on instant gratification. I'm like, oh, do I want it now? Yeah, I'm just going to have it now. And I actually had a talk with myself. Was it yesterday, day before? And I was in Lidl, obviously, and there was a really good Easter egg. And I was like, do you want that Easter egg? I really want that. And I was like, I don't really want it. Like, it just looks nice. And realistically, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have it. And then I'm just going to eat little bits of it. I'm not going to fully enjoy it because I'm just going to have little bites of it here and there. And then I'll overeat on it one night a little bit after dinner. And it's not that enjoyable. But that's just that focus on see it, want it, have it. And I think sometimes there's nothing to pathologize there. That's me just being like, I want chocolate, so I'm going to have it. And sometimes it's just a case of saying, okay, well, what's my future self going to thank me for? It's going to thank me for practicing a bit of delayed gratification. So when I do have my Easter egg, I'm going to enjoy it a little bit more, or whatever it is. I think that's quite different from like true impulsivity of like having to have it right now. I'm talking about more the kind of, oh, I want something, I'll have it. And I guess the true impulsivity side would be maybe more like towards ADHD, like we were talking about yesterday, Steph, with people with ADHD and the relationship with food. Sometimes that impulsivity is stronger. Okay, Anna.
It just like everything's aligned because this one I'm aiming slightly more towards Steph. It's no, so this client is an actress and she's asked, how the hell do you handle event after event after event? It's exhausting having pictures taken all the time and having to fit into clothes that you didn't choose and being compared, probably in my head, but to other people.
Don't miss that.
That was a knowing. Like,
it's really hard with that because I don't know obviously the specifics, but sometimes, I hate saying it is what it is, and you kind of just have to go, this is the job that I'm doing, this is what I'm just having to kind of go through a little bit. But it's whether, when it comes, like, do you mind just reading the first part out again?
How do you handle event after event after event?
I think having something afterwards in terms of like how to, whether it's like self-soothing or how to kind of get you out of that mindset that kind of draws you into this criticism and this like comparison cycle. It could be something, it doesn't need to be like really overcomplicated. It could be something simple as like after an audition or after I do a week on this job, I'm going to make sure I've got this event, you know, with my best friend, and we're going to go for a walk. I don't know, something really like nourishing for the soul. Because I think this job, it's so externally driven, you then become into this cycle of looking outside of yourself for these answers all of the time. So it's always about like, okay, I've just recognized that I'm feeling that way and it's uncomfortable. So what are the internal strategies that obviously we do to kind of again, sorry if it sounds a little bit wanky, but to ground you a little bit. And that's what I've learned over the years. But also when it comes to these jobs, and if you're in a position to kind of set a boundary, I really am a massive advocate of that. If someone's commenting on your body, making these little remarks, I wish I could tell myself that, like a 19-year-old Steph, that you don't have to listen to somebody commenting on your body. And it's so normalised as well.
I love all that. I don't think I've got a huge amount to add, really. I think same as what you were saying, I think when I've had loads of things on, like maybe I've been traveling with work or I've done loads of podcasts and I've been out and about a lot, and I do think this is not the same in our industry at all, but we are still in an aesthetics focused industry to some degree, and I don't feel the pressure so much anymore. But going out when you're so used to working at home and being in lycra and all of these things, you are definitely aware that you're out around other people in lycra, even if it's not a big thing for you. But I definitely find like that really intentional full day of not really going on social media, of really coming back to myself. And even if that's just lying on the sofa all day and watching the hills, as much as some people will say that's not rest, for me, if I'm really intentional with it, that genuinely is rest for me. And I lie there and I notice how good it feels to have my blanket on my body, and I just notice how nice it is to have silence. And so I think that could, like, just whatever it is that helps you feel like you're coming back to listening to your own, like your inner voice and like your own thoughts in your head. As much as we say don't run away with them, just as a reminder of like, oh yeah, this is who I actually am, not all of this other stuff that's coming at me. If you can get a whole day like that, great. But even if it's only half a day, be intentional with it. Turn your phone off. Don't go on Instagram, stuff like that. Okay. This is one of your questions, Steph. Is it common for people with disordered eating to do the binge restrict cycle in other areas of life? For example, when I was anorexic, I was incredible at saving money. When that developed into binging, I started spending impulsively.
I mean, it's still kind of the all or nothing type mindset, isn't it? That's what I would say. But I think also, I mean, this doesn't necessarily link to the binge restrict cycle, but I know myself, and I know working with clients, when it's come to like saving, it's also been a bit of a self-worth thing, in that they don't feel worthy of spending the money on themselves. Yeah, like I said, not related to the binge restrict cycle, but I think you certainly do see it infiltrate other areas of life, most definitely.
Yeah, I definitely do see this, and I've seen this with clients who struggle with spending as well. And some of the tools can be quite similar and transferable in the sense of like the vulnerability factors to doing that, and the triggers, etc., to doing that. And also recognizing the purpose that that's serving. Often, online shopping and scrolling is might be a habit, but it also might be serving a certain purpose of distraction or numbing or something else. But then I also think, looking a little bit deeper into this, spending impulsively, binge restrict cycle, alcohol, sex, gambling, all of these things, they all are based or rooted in dysregulation. So I think personally for me, I used to be really bad with money when I had a bad relationship with food too, and it could just be an association. But I definitely know, as my relationship with food has healed, if I'm having a bad time, I spend more money. 100% I do, and I know I'm doing it. I'm like,
Steph's just like, yep.
New top for me.
I've just had 4 face masks delivered, which is very exciting. From different shops. I'm not because I'm having a bad time. But that is my vice skincare at the moment. So yes, if you struggle to regulate yourself in kind of healthful coping strategies, often it will then manifest in these other coping strategies like food, binge restrict, spending possibly, etc. So yes, it is really quite common for these things. And again, it's just like a little thread of when I know I'm spending money and I'm like, oh, interesting, a better journal. I don't, but I definitely think about it.
I had a client this week actually talk about, because she's trying to like reduce her alcohol intake, and then she's noticed like, Steph, I'm craving sugar this week. And it's like, it's funny how we then look at the next thing that will kind of stimulate you and like go, oh yeah, that will give me that feeling.
So much, yeah. It's like, we just have to work our way through them all before we finally get to the point of like, oh, I need to meditate. Gosh darn it.
It's my question, right? Yes. How to manage a hangover craving session?
I think about managing your food environment, like maybe having, let's be honest, you're probably going to want some comfort food, but I mean, I don't know what the goals are here, but like make it as easy as possible for you the day before. Have the foods in that are nourishing for the soul, nourishing for the body, but give yourself some grace as well, I think.
Yeah, I always think as well with this one, actually it reminds me, because Trav came back hungover last weekend and I was fuming because I was like, don't like dare you have fun without me, like that's rude. But he just didn't want to do anything on the Sunday, and I was like, I know if we just did a little lap, you'll feel a little bit better. So I always think having a scheduled like outside activity, like it doesn't have to be anything, you know, big or anything like a long walk, but just something. I always think that's always worth just popping in. And also having like starchy carbs, like don't perceive them as like a bad thing, like have them and then have them paired with like a lot of volume foods, because you're obviously, I think in the question it says about a craving, and I think you trying to minimize it is going to probably increase the urgency of wanting that craving or whatever. So yeah, that's something I like.
Totally agree. I like to have things in the cupboard, like I like cheese on toast with beans if I'm hungover. I don't actually, to be fair, I don't really get hangovers, and I haven't drunk enough to have a hangover for a long time because I am such an angel. But I do like to have things like the waffles, beans and egg, or cheese, because I know that I'm going to want comfort food, and or I'll want a takeaway, and I think, well, takeaway's fine, but would I rather just have cheese on toast and whatever else, maybe, or if it's there, I'll have that. So I like to plan that. I'd also say plan your next day too. So often it's a Saturday night, and then the hangover is not the issue. It's the fact that on a Sunday we would normally do our food shopping, and so then Monday comes around and we don't have any of the stuff that we need. So make sure that you've got the things that you need for the following day, so it doesn't kind of trickle in. And then the other thing I'd say is, like, alcohol wreaks a little bit of havoc with your gut, and that can impact things like what you choose to eat, etc. So I would try to have, you might not want vegetables, but having create, like making a smoothie or something in the morning with like greens and fruit and protein and milk, and just getting like rehydrating and getting as many plant-based foods in as you can in the morning, despite what you're going to have later, can be really, really helpful just to start to settle your gut a little bit. And obviously hydration is key. Anna.
So is it worth tracking your cycle, quote unquote, even though it's not? So she said, let me start again. Is it worth tracking your cycle even on contraception? So it's not a true cycle, but is it worth?
I don't think so. Some people report that they still get some cyclical fluctuations in things. I mean, it's not going to do you any harm. You might see some cyclical fluctuations in things. I would say it's not going to do you any harm, but you might. But I would go into it not expecting to see something specific. Just, you could just get curious and see, like, oh, that's interesting, or not.
Yeah, so I know, speaking to this client, she's been off contraception for a while and has then gone back on it. And let's all laugh at the fact that when I went on the pill again, it was 2020 and obviously couldn't do anything anyway. But I noticed for the first like 6 months, those PMS symptoms were hard, like really, really hit me, even though it wasn't obviously hormonal. So yeah, I would say potentially worth doing, just as so you can, it might not be, I mean, no cycle's the same anyway, is it? But it might just offer you a bit of a more insight into what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. What advice or tips would you give when the fear of eating more to try and break the binge? This is binge purge cycle. So this is somebody that doesn't obviously work. She works with Roslyn. So what advice or tips would you give when the fear of eating more to try and break the binge cycle feels so scary and overwhelming?
So one of my clients came up with like a reminder for herself on the more challenging days, and it was, my choice today is my freedom tomorrow. And I love that, and I think that is something that you could potentially use at this time.
That's nice. I did a whole podcast episode on the fear of weight gain when improving your relationship with food. I don't know what number it was, but if you search in the toolbar on your phone on Spotify, you will see that fear of weight gain. If you search for that, you'll find that. I would remind you that this is a season of your life, and it's just one season or one chapter of your book. And in order to get through to the next season, you have to sit through this season. And right now, that nobody likes the fact that it's pissing with rain every single day. Nobody likes that it's always grey, and on occasion we get a little bit of sunlight and we're all freezing our tits off. We don't really like it, but we know that in order to get to spring, summer, kind of have to go through this last phase of winter, and otherwise we don't get there. And so kind of trying to stay objective with that, and I know it's really difficult, but remind yourself that this really is the way to get to summer, or whichever season that you love the most, and it's the only way to get through this point. So keep that in perspective. And I think also sometimes being objective about the fact that eating more, often we think eating more means eating more calories, but often with binge, someone is binging, eating more means eating less calories, fewer calories. It's just that our brains tell us something else. Our brains are like, no, if you eat more now, you're eating more calories, but that's really not what happens on the whole. So try to, again, stay objective with that. And also, of course, do all of the work on your body image of, you know, managing your body checking and wearing comfortable clothes and looking at your social media environment and all of these things that will support your body image at this time.
The only thing I would add as well is if you're feeling like a lack of trust in yourself, because obviously this is a really difficult time, like, I know it's easy for me to say this, but have like some trust in Roz or the process. And I, for one, have seen Roz in action. I had a client actually transfer over to Roz, and she's just amazing. So yeah, I just want to say that. Shout out to Roz, you're wicked.
Woo woo,
woo woo, hype girl. That's all I've got to say.
Great.
Right.
Steph, you're next, I think.
Oh, it is, sorry. Oh, this is a December question. Do you do New Year's resolutions? If yes, how did they go this year, and what will next year be? Sorry, I can't read.
Well, let's I guess this is from then, so let's reframe to, did you guys do resolutions and have you stuck to them?
Ish.
Great. Any that you'd like to share, or are they personal?
I mean, no, not really. No, I think this was mine. It was more just to like enjoy the present and not think about constant like achievement, like just enjoy where you're at in your life, Steph. That was, and I'm trying to do that more now.
Nice, love that. Mine was, I didn't have a New Year's resolution, but I had a New Year intention of courage, which I do feel like I genuinely have tried with that. And my other thing was, which I totally failed at, was making more of an effort when I do things like podcasts where we record them, so that I don't look like a troll. And I think I failed at that in like February.
What? You annoy me when you say that.
Sorry. Do you know what? Like I'm so like on social media and stuff, I'll happily, like, I always will talk without makeup on and don't use fillers and stuff like that. But I kept doing podcasts for other people, right? And then they'd use them as reels, and then I'd look at them and I'd be like, why do I look like that? And then I'd see them with other people and I think, why do they look so nice? And then I realize it's because I show up without, like, with just washing my face or like scraping my hair back. So I thought, if you want to feel less like that, then start showing up on these things, like presenting yourself in the way that you want to present yourself, which I did for 6 weeks. And then I realized, oh, but that requires time, like between meetings and stuff, to do these things. And then I realized, I'm not sure that really logically fits into my day. And then that's the patriarchy. And then I thought, a wee bit of mascara and I'll be fine. So no, I didn't do that one. But I'm going to keep trying. I am going to keep trying. It's just maybe a dip.
You've got all your face masks. You're glowing naturally, aren't you?
So much, babe. I know. That's why I'm obsessed with skincare. The more skincare I do, the less that I need to worry about putting makeup on. Anna.
Oh, how much is too much structure with food at the start of this process?
That's a good question. I was talking about this yesterday with specifically to do ADHD clients, and how, because we, you know, like meal plans, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of other examples that's kind of like, oh, you don't do that anymore. But actually for certain people, that's kind of needed. And I do think we all benefit from structure, and I don't know where it's all come from, where structure is now a bad thing. So I think in the beginning, especially, I know with my own clients, they may need a bit more specific direction, and I will give that to them, because we always meet people where they are, right? So yeah, I don't know if that answers that question. Have I gone on a tangent? Not sure.
No, it's good.
No,
I think it's like, think about the intention behind it, right? Because I might eat at the same times every day. I don't really, roughly-ish, but I might eat at the same times every day because that's what works within my day, right? But if I have to eat at the same time every day, and I'm getting stressed because this podcast runs over and I don't have time to eat my meal properly and at the usual time, then that's an unhealthful way of thinking about my meal structure, right? So on paper, it could look very, very similar, but in your head, the intention behind it is quite different, and the thoughts and feelings that arise around it can be quite different. So there is not really an objective, this is too much, although I would say too much structure would be like, specifically have 42.1 grams of rice and 102 grams of chicken, and that would be too much structure. And sticking to, like, weighing your food regularly would be too much structure. And of course there are sometimes exceptions, but like, even if someone is tracking their calories and they're on a fat loss program, after a week, maybe you weigh your food because you've not done it before and you don't know what portion size is. But after a week, that's something that you then ditch. It's not something that you continue on forevermore. So there are some exceptions to the too much structure thing, but realistically, I would just think of, like, is this stressing me out? Oh, okay, do I need to be a bit more flexible with it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it me? It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Okay. I'm in the habit of getting into bed and binge eating in the evenings. How do I break this? Obviously, you're working with Rosalind, so you will be breaking this. However,
oh, go on. Sorry, you go.
No. What can you replace it with? So it's no, like, not that we set rules, but no food in the bedroom. What can you replace it with? I don't know.
I was going to say about I've been talking about nighttime eating quite a lot, and I think having like a bit of a nighttime wind down routine can really help your relationship with food in the evening, especially if you're someone that comes in from work late and you're kind of trying to regain your day or your night. And I think we use food to kind of give us something, don't we? So I think, again, I know this person's working with Ros, so it might be slightly different, but having a little look at other ways to help yourself that isn't related to food, like a little nighttime routine. And obviously working with Ros, you'll be doing everything in the day to support yourself at nighttime as well.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And for reference, things that you'll be doing in the day will be things like eating regularly, eating enough, making sure that you are eating before bed a genuinely satiating meal, and probably a genuinely satiating supper, depending on the times that you eat. You'll be working on things like mindfulness and compassion, and all of these things that we would talk about normally anyway. Something that we've used before with, I know we spoke about this years ago on the podcast, is when you find yourself in bed and you've got that urge to eat, can you give yourself just 5 minutes of meditation before you do anything else? Just have a 5-minute pause and do 5 minutes meditation, and then make a decision based on that. Sometimes if you've woken up in the night to eat, that can be really helpful, because you do often fall straight asleep again. Or at least it grounds you, because often when you wake up in the night, you're not super grounded, you're kind of a bit disorientated, and it can become a bit of a habit.
Yeah, one of my old clients that was struggling with like nighttime eating, so going to bed and then waking up in the middle of the night and binging, she had a like box at the side of her bed, and it had headphones in. If she wanted to meditate, it had a book, some like sleep pillow spray, that's what it's called, isn't it? So it was all like super accessible. She didn't have to think about it, it was right there. And like you said, just giving her that space to calm down before making a decision.
Like that. And I think too, just getting curious about what's happening at nighttime. Often there are lots of reasons why we tend to overeat at nighttime. Sometimes it's the first time that we're on our own, and there's that creating a space for feelings and thoughts to show up that we haven't had space for that day? Is it because we've spent all day at the service of other people, or, you know, surrounded by other people, and it's like that revenge bedtime procrastination of, I'm just going to eat, this is my time to do these things. And we were talking about this yesterday, we went with Steph on about ADHD and scrolling and stuff. Sometimes it's like, I'll just scroll on my phone because this is my time. And I've got a client at the moment who we were having that discussion with too, because that's super common, and food can be part of that. And then it's about just awareness of that, of saying, okay, well, how do I actually want to spend my time? And am I letting other people's stuff leak into my time? Do I have solid boundaries? Am I checking my emails before bed? All of these little things where you're giving away your time, and so you're trying to claw it back, and like, well, food brings me comfort, this is my time, I'm going to eat now. There are so many potential reasons why we do tend to overeat at night, so really working through and developing your awareness around what that might be for you.
Agreed. How to navigate body dysmorphia? This is another Roz question.
Great questions, Roz's clients. Keep them coming in. I think the most important thing, personally, when it comes to body dysmorphia or body image is understanding and recognizing that it's not about your body. And I know that we say this all the time, but the awareness that, especially with body dysmorphia, you genuinely are not seeing your body the way that it is, and holding space for that and saying, okay, I see this, but this is genuinely not, this is not objective. So do I have to fall into the narrative that, and the feelings and thoughts that come with that? Or can I make space for the fact that this is not objective? It's kind of like saying, I'm trying to think of an example here. Like this, okay, the sky is blue. I mean, it's great, but like the sky is blue. And then if you saw it as green one day because you had a headache, you wouldn't lose sleep over the fact it was green. Well, you might, because you went, oh my God, I'm seeing a green sky. But you'd be like, okay, objectively, I know the sky is blue. This is a transient thing that I've got this bug and it's making me see that the sky is green. So I can say, oh, that's interesting that the sky is green. But I know deep down the sky is blue. Okay, I'm going to go to sleep. That was such a great analogy. I just thought
your analogies have been spot on between that and the hayfield. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really trying. But like just trying to keep that objectivity of recognizing that it's not reality is the most fundamental thing, I think, when it comes to anything to do with your body image, and sometimes keeping a log of your thoughts and your feelings and your body image and how you see yourself can be really impactful and insightful, because you might find that the days that you're really stressed, or the days that you feel more lonely or sad, are the days that you genuinely believe that you are in a larger body, for example, or in a smaller body, however that shows up for you. Or the days that you spend more time on social media are the days that you see yourself with less muscle, or again, whatever that may be for you. And because it's all well and good us saying this to you, but actually experiencing it for yourself is really powerful. And I remember I had a client last year, I think she finished up, and that was the big thing for her, because her background was very restrictive, and she never stopped having the thoughts of bloating, or stopped having the thoughts that she was in a bigger body than she was. They were still there by the time she stopped working with me. However, the difference was, she said, and I know that I felt this, and what's really interesting is that I was also feeling X, Y, and Z that day, so it's so cool that I can see that that's what it was related to. And that's kind of what we want to get to, because we all have days where, like this, we don't all have body dysmorphia or experience body dysmorphia, but we all have days where we see ourselves slightly differently than to what we are.
Is it me? Sorry, I'm not on the ball today. So this client has just started a fat loss journey and has asked, looking ideally for non-related food activities to do with her elderly mum.
Oh.
Like, she's done, it's been great. Like, you know, when well, I'm not going to say full circle, but when we first started, like, being able to go out for coffee and cake with her mum, and that's what they've been doing, and it's so great to see. But now we've got a new goal, and she's just being mindful of that.
I mean, you can still obviously go out for coffee without cake. Their space there was like,
Sorry, I'm just thinking,
no, always cake.
yeah, God, that's how you have your coffee, weirdo. I was just thinking, like, I mean, do we know what her interests are?
I don't, I'm afraid. I mean, I've only seen photos of her mum and she looks like a really great woman. So I think she'd be up for anything, Steph.
Oh, wow.
aren't we all, my friend? Aren't we all?
I'm trying to think of something fun that you could do. Like, I don't know.
Do you know what I'm up for right now? A lot is card games. Now, bear with Uno, Monopoly Deal. Monopoly Deal is quite hard, but once you get into it, oh, great. What's the one we found in the States? Phase 8 or Phase 10, also good. Went into John Lewis with my best friend the other day because we were also getting games for our holiday. And the John Lewis, I've got so many games that are transportable games. Go for coffee and play a game. And honestly, I went when Em and I were in Edinburgh recently, we were in Starbucks and we were sat upstairs and there was a couple and they were drinking their coffee and they were playing Uno. And I just was looking at them thinking, you're just living your best life, aren't you? Just living your best life. And I just, card games are great. They're very immersive. I think they're very meditative. They're very like, less meditative, more mindful, right? Because you have to be super focused on them. And what's amazing is that it's not just immersive, you have to also be active. It's the same thing as like computer games and stuff. You get into a bit of a flow state with card games. And that's hard to get into. Like, in general, to get into a flow state with anything. So bring some card games and go for coffee. That's my recommendation, I think.
Such a good point, because I do that on holiday, but why am I just doing it on holiday? Why am I not doing it on a Tuesday night, you know?
Yeah, why?
Why am I not doing
Snap out? Snap's a bit aggressive, actually. Snap, I don't like it. The stress too much for me.
Have you tried, am I allowed to swear?
Not
okay.
really.
It's a swear word where you basically call out if they're lying.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. They play it on that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's a good game. And you have to like work out if they're lying.
Like the complete opposite of poker.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
I've never heard. I've never heard of it. I don't know the name, but I've never heard of that vibe of a game before. But it sounds right on my street. I'm up for any sort of games, so you send me the details of that one because I'll be on it.
I am thinking, like, my mum, since retiring, is the busiest woman you've ever known, and she has a Scrabble club. So Scrabble, if that's your bag. She does pottery and painting. Again, there's loads of places that you can do that on a weekend type thing. But yeah, I mean, it reminds me, like, you know, that question we had on the other podcast about kind of non-fitness and finding fun again. And I think it's all about that, isn't it?
Theatre's good.
Oh yeah.
Are they wanting to do something together, as in like you're interacting like constantly, or like going to see a show? Obviously you're not doing that, but you're enjoying something together. So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, there you go. You enjoy your card games at the theatre. Feedbacks, that's how that goes. Steph, question.
Oh, I wasn't ready, sorry. How can I train myself to be a better listener? There we go. I need to train myself, clearly. A lot of times I find myself talking nonsense instead of just being quiet. I've also realised that when I'm listening to others, I'm more thinking about what I want to say instead of actively listening and trying to understand the other person's situation.
Great awareness. Congratulations to you, Georgia's client. I would say question, like, what are you uncomfortable with silence? That's a really common thing. So you just say stuff because you just can't sit in silence. You can, but you feel uncomfortable with that. And I would practice sitting in silence. It's easy for me to say as an introvert and someone who's naturally shy, but I remember when I started lecturing and I would ask questions and I had to have a class of say 60 people. and they'd all be on like the, like the graded seats, so it was like an auditorium thing, and I would say, I'm going to ask questions, and they would all just sit in silence. And I used to train myself, and I'd say at the start of the lecture, like, I will happily stand here in silence until someone asks each question that I ask. And so I'd ask a question, and then it'd be like 60 like 20-year-olds just staring at me, and I just have to stand at the front and be like, don't talk, don't talk, don't talk. And it was horrible, because you feel like that 1 minute that you're waiting, it feels like 10 minutes long. But realizing that you can sit in silence and actually nothing happens. So something, actually, when I was doing my meditation course, one of the week's tasks that they had us do was to listen better. And when you listen to someone, like, just talk less. And I remember trying to do it on the EIQ live, and I was like, I actually have not said a single thing because it was like, I don't know when I'm supposed to talk, and that doesn't really work in all situations, right? And that wasn't an Emma thing, that was a me thing. So I think when you try having a conversation with someone, right, and then just like wait for 10 seconds and see if anything else comes up, or when they're talking, maybe like challenge yourself to like have another question, like have a question to ask them, rather than saying, oh yeah, when this happened to me, like I've just done when you've asked this question, is talked about myself. But premise of the podcast, right?
I think we've learnt this through counselling, haven't we, Anna?
I was just going to say, is it time to flex out the fundamental listening skills?
Can we? But I think what I learned from that part of the course was that when people are talking, we're obviously thinking as we're talking. And if you remember that, then people are probably going to have another strand of thought. So when there is a pause, sometimes it's easy to jump in and add. And also, as naturally as coaches, you kind of are there to kind of obviously coach and support. And if you're a good friend, you probably feel the need to support them and validate, etc. But if you actually, like Emilia just said, if you practice pausing more, you'll probably notice that they will say something else on top of that and finish their own thoughts instead of you trying to finish it for them.
And I mean, this is going to be dependent on like what the conversation is about, but I think like you're noticing that you're wanting to ask questions, and say it's a friend that just wants to offload and do a bit of a word dump on you, like check in with what is it a question for you and like your own stuff, or is the question actually going to help their situation?
Okay, the nice question. I'm really good at giving people strong eye contact whilst in a conversation, but struggle in passing. For example, at the gym, out shopping, etc., I feel afraid of looking up and smiling at people, and this in turn makes me appear less approachable and means I'm less likely to meet people. Any advice on this would be appreciated. None of us can, I'm sure, relate.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Oh, so relatable though. Because I totally agree with that. Like, I feel like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, there's nothing more annoying than someone looking somewhere else and I think you're not listening to me. So I make sure that I do it back. So I really try to hold people's gazes.
Just staring intently at them angrily.
But randomly, like walking down the street, I don't know if it's like London, I'm not in London anymore, but being in London for 10 years, everyone's in their own little bubbles and everyone's looking at the floor all the time. I found myself like not really looking up and looking at people in the eye. But yeah, so I don't really have anything productive to say apart from maybe like, I don't want to be that person that says smile more. But if you smile a little bit and then you catch someone's eye, it probably feels a little bit, I don't know, more comfortable rather than just like looking at somebody. Like catching someone's eye on the tube as well. God. So weird. Like, oh, what do I do? Do I stay there? Do I look somewhere else?
Do you know what? You've just reminded me of this reel that I shared the other day, and did you send me the smiling one, Anna? Of there's this really funny woman on Instagram, and she does these reels of like when my husband says I need to smile more.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
She's going around the house, cleaning the toilet, like with this horrific cheesy smile on her face, with all dressed up. Like, it's so good. And that's what that reminded me of. I would constructively, I would say, like, it's really quite common. I would like set yourself like a challenge, be quite quantitative with it, and say, right, I'm gonna go to Sainsbury's and I'm going to make eye contact with 3 people with a smile. a little smile, not a creepy smile. Yeah. Don't like follow them around just staring at them with their creepy smile. Steph resembles right now like a chucky dog. Yeah, so I would, because realistically, if you're not quantifying this, it's a bit kind of airy-fairy of like, I'm just going to try and make a bit more eye contact. Start with safe spaces of like the checkout person. If you go to an actual person, make eye contact with them, and I know you said it's easier with a conversation, but strike up a little bit of a conversation and make eye contact with them. Or maybe you could do it with the person behind you when you put the little divider on and you give eye contact then, like those, because those micro moments are so important of connection between people, and I think they can be really impactful in terms of just making us feel more connected and less lonely. So it's amazing that you are kind of noticing that and you're ready to do it. So set yourself a challenge of however many times, even if it's just one person a day, that you make that eye contact with and smile with. Or I'd say start with like kids, because kids are always like, oh yeah. But then I did that the other day to a girl in a trolley, and she looked at me like, she was like, who is this woman? Why is she smiling at me? So kids can also be vicious. So if you're not ready for the rejection, then maybe don't start with kids.
I was going to say, that's something I wouldn't do. Kids look at me and they're like, ugh.
So one of my clients is working on her self-confidence, and she set the target of like saying hi to people when she was out dog walking. And in the first week, it actually meant that she helped rescue a dog that had run away. So that was quite cool. And then this week, when she checked in, she was like, someone actually said hi to me first. They know that they can approach me. So I must be changing like how I'm moving and approaching people. So I was like, oh, there we go then. Wow. So
it's interesting when you actually pay attention to it. Like, I definitely think too, when we're in our own space, we're less approachable. When we go on holiday or traveling or something, or we're even just in a different city, I think that you're much more generally open to receiving, and you look up more. Whereas when you're at home, you're always just going about your day, and you can be a lot more closed off. And realistically, if you're looking to build connection, it's really where at home, and I say home as in where you live, not so much your house. That's really where actually you want to build that connection and you want to be more open.
I found that from moving location, like people are so much nicer here, and they do like say hi.
You're up north now, Steph.
People are just like, hi. I'm like, oh God, who are you talking to? Oh, it's me. And then in London, people just don't do that. And then I think I get, like you said, like micro connections. I really, really like that, because I do think it's made a difference to me day to day as well. Like just those little conversations or little hi in between.
My sister always says that about London. She's like, I can go for a run in Scotland and everyone says hi, and I go for a run and I'll be out for hours in London and not a single person even looks at you. And you're like, oh God. Anna, question.
Let's go lighthearted. If you could go anywhere on vacation, where would you go?
Oh,
right now I'm going to say Austin because I'm desperate to get back, but if I exclude Austin from the list, right, I think my next place is Hawaii. I really want to go to Hawaii. I think, yeah, me and my best friend, we've been best friends since we were 13, and so we're none of us are married, obviously. Well, it's not obvious that she's not, but she's also still not married. And so we realized we probably wouldn't have like a 25th wedding anniversary, or like, I think it's silver. I think silver's 25th. And so we were saying when it's our 25th, it's going to be near our 40th. So we were going to do a big trip, and we're going to go to all the places, or at least some of the places that we've always wanted to go. So my request for that trip is Hawaii. So I'm going to do that in 2 years, which will just be,
that's amazing,
the best. And we're just going to treat it like an anniversary. It's going to be the best time ever. So excited. Where are yours?
If I think like Europe wise, I want to go to Croatia because it looks insane, and I also want to go to New Zealand because I've got family over there, and well, I mainly just want to go to New Zealand but it'd be great to see them too.
New Zealand, I've heard weirdly like 50-50, like, oh my God, it's the best place you're ever going to visit. It's amazing. And then some people are like, oh my God, it's so boring. I'm like, how can you find those?
I mean, I think if I fit in a boring place, like, yeah, I would. It would be fine. I'm not going to struggle there.
But yeah, I was like, God, you're boring. For thinking it's boring. I've never been, but I'm sure I'd like it. Yeah.
See, all of like I have loads of friends that went traveling and did like Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and they were like, look, people rave about Australia, but New Zealand's where you want to go. And I feel like it's more my vibe. So.
Yeah. Would you get like a camper van and go from north to south? That's one of my bucket lists.
Yeah.
Love that. I would love to go to Japan. Don't know why, but I'd like to. I've done a lot of China and the Far East, but I've not done Japan, and I'd like to add that to my list. I don't know, like, yeah, I just would love that. Yeah, it's got a mixture of everything, like city, hiking. I don't really know until I'm there. I'll tell you when I'm there.
Okay. Okay, so what's the year 2023? By 2028, we'll have all been to these places.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your questions. Keep them coming in. Thank you both so much. Bye.
Bye.